Sony is charging indie developers 25 grand for PlayStation Store visibility. 25 grand. We've been asking ourselves the question for a while now about why indies aren't primarily placed on PlayStation consoles. Why is Sony not working with indies as much as they used to back in the day? What is going on? I'll remove those, it's too much glare. But indies made up a huge pillar of Sony's games back at the beginning of the PlayStation 4 generation. The PlayStation Vita was pretty much propped up just by indie developers. And even the end of the PlayStation 3, indies were so important. But this week, there has been an article published on Kotaku about indie developers kind of being boned for 25 grand to get placements on the PlayStation Store, which is just insane. Now, this whole thing is published currently on Kotaku, published by John Walker, but it was part of an initial Twitter tirade from an indie developer named Neon Doctrine, who was complaining about the practices of publishing indie games on the different major platforms, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, and really bringing to light some of the major problems with publishing on the PlayStation ecosystem. We'll go through this article, and then we're just gonna have a bit of a chat about what this actually means and why this is kind of a big deal to finally understand. It's a really, really cold day here today in Sydney. Okay, this is the article on Kotaku's website now that you can see. I'm just gonna read through some of it. It's pretty long, so we're not going through all of it, but I'm gonna skim through the first part and a couple of other parts that I think are really relevant, and then just sort of give my take on what this all means for Sony. So in a furious tirade on Twitter, independent games publisher Ian Garner of Neon Doctrine has unleashed his frustrations with trying to publish games on the major games console. I actually don't know what these guys have done. What is Neo Doctrine? The Legend of Tynating? I don't know if I'm familiar with this. What games have they published? Jacob Jazz? Don't know that one. I've never heard of any of these, I don't believe. Have we heard of any of these games, guys, on the PlayStation? I'm not sure if we have. It doesn't really matter anyway. It doesn't make too much of a difference. They're all, quite clearly indie games. I don't think we have. Maybe the Count of Lunacore. I believe that was an easy platinum game, which is probably why I'm aware of it. This one here definitely looks like Rocco's Modern Life. Anyway, not relevant. One he says that isn't made easy by Microsoft during the spleen venting. I guess that's his venting session. He suggests that getting prominent promotions for a game from the platform holder requires spending at least $25,000 according to financial figures we've had verified by another source. If it's Sony he's talking about, that can reach as high as $200,000, which is just an insane amount of money. And look, I knew it cost a fair bit of money to get a game published on the PlayStation Store, and then I knew it cost every time you did patch updates and updates to the game, getting things changed in the store, getting prominent placements on the store, and it is a marketplace. It's the same as a retailer. Games don't just get put on end caps at retailers, they get paid for by publishers and by any sort of distributor. So even if it's a cereal box, if it's put at the end of an aisle, it's paid for by the company to get put at the end of the aisle. It doesn't just get put there. So that's not completely crazy that you do have to pay for placements, but for $200,000, assuming they're quoting US dollars as well, some of these indie developers, especially looking through this guy's portfolio, they wouldn't be making $200,000 on those games. There's just no way that they would be seeing that kind of return on those games. I just don't believe that would be possible. Without naming either Sony or PlayStation, British developer and publisher Garner details just how difficult it's been to gain support, store presence, and even launch discounts when releasing games on the platform. And we have heard this before because there's been instances where small indie developers and publishers have come out and expressed how they have to pay to get included in some of those PlayStation Store sales, how they submit their games to be included, and it's almost like a lottery. They get included, but then they have to pay to be a part of it as well, which is why it makes it such a big deal when they do get included in there and they can finally get some, additional sales or revenue from the sales of their smaller games. If Platform X doesn't like your game, no fanfare, no feature, no love, Garner claims, after stating that getting any attention at all requires him to jump through hoops, suggesting that developers have no ability to manage their games. He goes on in detail about how a game's presence is based on the platform holder's own evaluation of the product. How is this evaluation done? Dunno, they don't share, nor will they share the value they ascribe to my game. Which, yeah, again, I guess it's up to the platform holder's discretion. And I do sort of understand this too, because there's so much stuff on the PlayStation Store. And I'm getting ahead of myself because that's part of the discussion I want to have shortly. So let me keep finishing this article. Garner claims that all games released on the store have to go through incredibly difficult compliance spread over three generations of back-end software, then create a specific trailer for the platform, write a blog for their site, and then submit multiple forms of social media, and then even getting assigned an account manager to help with this proves difficult. After alleging that even being able to launch with a discounted price requires the console owner's approval, and even this is very limited, which I guess makes sense why we see some games launch with a discounted price and some games not. I guess probably being verified by Sony or Microsoft in terms of what they deem as relevant to offer that discount too, so it's not just given to everybody. And that this can be bypassed by paying a minimum of $25,000. That is a figure we've since had verified by 2 sources. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much the guts of this article. It just goes on here. They're talking about other sources and kind of just what we want to talk about anyway. So I think that's probably enough of the article, and I think that's probably enough of the article, so it lets us have a broader discussion about the PlayStation Store and the Xbox Store and the Nintendo Switch Store, because I think they all suffer from a very similar problem and what these guys are experiencing. So we're seeing that Sony has now put a premium in place to get placements on the storefront so you can get noticed, and honestly you probably need that as an indie developer now because of how overcrowded those storefronts are. We've seen probably over the last 18 or 24 months the PlayStation Store has just been bombarded with a glut of, let's be honest, shovelware titles, and not all of them are like this. You know, a lot of indie publishers and indie developers do put a ton of work into their games and release these things that they've spent a huge amount of time working on, which do just go under the radar. But then there's a bunch of stuff which shouldn't be getting risen to the top, games that are clearly just uploaded there as cash grabs, as asset flips, even as just easy trophy games. And I'm not talking about, you know, Radleaker here, because a lot of those guys actually do put a fair bit of effort into their games, even if we don't all agree with it. I think as a publisher, Radleaker's practices around trophy hunters and exploiting trophy hunters is one thing, but the talent that they acquire through the developers that they partner with actually is quite good talent, and some of those games are very high quality games, even if they're all marketed under that same banner. So they're not even the guys I'm talking about. I'm talking about some of the absolutely egregious ones. The thing that comes to mind for me is something like Snakeboat, one of these games that shouldn't be on the PlayStation Store. It shouldn't have a platinum trophy, and it shouldn't be given the platform that it's given. Hence why I don't talk about that game specifically on this channel, because it frustrates me so much how that game gets so much attention in our community as a trophy hunting game when it doesn't deserve to get that much attention. There's other games, and look, I don't know how good Neon Doctrine's games are, but I'm sure that, you know, if this guy's complaining about it on Twitter, he's obviously got a passion and a love for the games he's creating, and he's just not getting the traction he needs. And as a result of that, he's obviously immensely frustrated when there are other games like Snakeboat, which is selling on the PlayStation Store for I think $1 or $2 or something like that, and making good money and selling plenty of copies and probably charting, even though it doesn't deserve to be, because all of us trophy hunters are buying it. So, you know, that's a big problem. I think there is a massive quality control problem of games just being dumped on the PlayStation Store. And while this guy's explained here how difficult it is to get games on the store, it honestly can't be that hard if we're seeing things like Road Bustle and Chickens on the Road and games like that just being pushed to the PlayStation Store. And I've never actually submitted a game myself. I've never made a game personally to upload on the PlayStation Store, so I can only talk from my experience working at Sony, as well as, you know, these articles and what I see the landscape looking like. But there's obviously a disconnect, because I think getting the game on the PlayStation Store isn't the hard part. You pay a fee, you get it on the store, and if you market it and promote it correctly, as in it's an easy platinum trophy game and it's only $1, which is what a lot of these guys are doing, it sells and they probably make their money back for getting it on the store. They don't need any special premium placements, because, you know, the likes of myself or other trophy hunting YouTube channels will promote these games and they'll rise just off the back of that alone, which is not right. That's not a good thing. It's a bad thing, which is why you've seen a change in the content I've done of late, not heroing these kind of titles, which I think are probably more villains in our community than anything else. No disrespect for people who want to play those games. It's completely fine. It's up to you what you play. I don't care. We're not here to judge. This conversation is more about just people getting a fair shake. And clearly, you know, indie developers are frustrated. This article talks about a couple of different developers who have suffered something similar to this guy, who have experienced having to pay absorbent fees, $25K, $200,000, which is, you know, honestly, probably not even the amount of money they would make back in terms of sales from some of these games. Some of these guys are probably only selling a few hundred units, a few thousand units, and realistically, you know, an indie game that you have no idea what it is, you've never heard of the publisher before, the write-up might not be very good, the screenshots might not be very good. How many units are they going to be selling in the game? Honestly, it's not going to be many. So I can completely sympathize with the frustrations of some of these guys. So it's a challenging one for sure. Curious to get everyone's thoughts on this and the state of the PlayStation Store. I think that this kind of conversation goes into a far better broader discussion about the PlayStation Store, which I'd like to do in more depth and detail over the coming weeks. So I think I'll probably park it there to do that. But if you're an indie developer and you've just come across this video for whatever reason, and you're making a game, you're having a hard time getting it noticed on the PlayStation Store, reach out to me, either in the comment section, on Discord, or through my business email in my About section. Reach out to me and let's figure a way out of promoting your game on the channel. I'm happy to play your game, or we can play it on a stream, or we can talk about it if you want to do that, or I can do an interview with you if you want to do that as well. I would love to try and feature some more indie talent on this channel to try and help you out if that's something I can do with this platform. So honestly, if you're watching this and you're an indie developer, please reach out to me. But if you're just a regular viewer of the channel, I'd love to get everyone's thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Do you think, what do you think of the state of the PlayStation Store, or even of this specific problem of being charged these exorbitant fees by these publishers? Everyone's got to make money at the end of the day, so I do get it. And charging those fees kind of does wean out some of the trash, but it also probably weans out some of the gold in there too. So curious to get everyone's thoughts on that. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like. I always love a like, you know that. And if you're a new viewer and you haven't watched one of my videos before and you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We're actually working towards 50,000 subscribers this year, so it would be awesome if you hit that subscribe button as well. But that is all from me. Thank you so much for listening to my ramblings for the last 10 minutes or whatever it's been. And see ya. Patreons, it is that time again. Thank you, each and every one of you popping up on the screen here, for supporting me this month on Patreon. It is thanks to all of you that we can keep these lights on in the back of the studio. Without you, the lights wouldn't be on. So thank you so much for that. If you want to support me further on Patreon or as a channel member, you can hit the join button directly below this video on YouTube, or the link in the description down below to go over to Patreon and help support the channel. Thank you guys, you're all legends.